Hi, my name is Blaise Rothwell, and you've just watched my performance of the first half of Handel's Violin Sonata in F major, from the book Masterpieces for Marimba by Thomas McMillan. Interestingly, modern scholars are doubtful that Handel actually wrote this piece, but it does appear in collections of his solo sonatas. I'm going to discuss my approach to performing this piece, and it is the 2020 Kansas All-State Mallet Etude. So, if you're using this video for your preparation on that piece, be sure to watch as I discuss how I approach the Handel F major violin sonata. It's important to remember that this solo was, after all, written for violin, and that fact will inform many of our performance choices, especially when it comes to phrasing and articulation. Make sure you listen to several violinists perform this work. There are recordings of violinists playing this work on YouTube, as well as Spotify and iTunes. In an ideal world, I would be playing this solo on a marimba, but unfortunately I do not have one in my studio. However, everything I'll talk about on vibraphone will translate to marimba. I want to make sure you're familiar with the key of F major. F major has one flat, which is B flat, and the notes of the F major scale are F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and F. You'll want to practice your scales because, as we'll discover, there are many scalar passages throughout the sonata. A couple of things stand out to me as I look at the Masterpieces for Marimba edition of this solo: the articulations and the dynamics. The arranger, Thomas McMillan, adds accents and staccato marks in places where they do not appear in the original violin sheet music. As we will explore, some of these are good musical decisions, while others are not. Let's take a look at the first two measures. McMillan notates an accent on beats 1 and 3 of each bar. Those are the strong beats of each measure. If we were to play these exactly as written, it would sound something like this. The effect of that is very heavy-handed and unmusical, much like a marching band. Now, we certainly don't want to play Handel's Baroque violin music the same way we would play modern marching arts, drumline, or frontline music. You'll also notice that McMillan did not continue this pattern of accents for the rest of the work. So I think it's safe to take those accents with a grain of salt. When you think of how a violinist would perform, they're using a combination of up bows and down bows, with down bows taking place on the stronger parts of the measure. These will naturally have a little bit more weight, a little bit more emphasis, similar to how, if you're right-handed, your dominant hand will maybe have a little bit more strength to it. The way I'm going to perform it now is more similar to how a violinist would perform this melody. You've probably noticed that there is repeated melodic material. A 16th note grouping that starts on F natural, a 16th note grouping that starts on G natural, and then a scalar passage starting on a high A. This is a sequence, and as performers, we definitely want to do something with the phrasing or dynamics to give the sequence a bit of direction. The way I perform this piece is to follow the line. As the pitch rises, so does the dynamic level, and as the pitch falls, the dynamic level does the same. Listen to how I am phrasing those first two measures with a crescendo leading to the high A, and then a slight diminuendo leading away from it. So you have to think from the beginning, you're aiming for that high A. You have to think with a long-term goal in sight. Moving ahead, you'll notice that Handel uses dynamics to set off different parts of phrases, like a question and answer or like an echo. Listen to how I perform the dynamics of the first 8 measures of this piece. Listen to how the forte, mezzo, forte, and piano each have a specific level, but listen to how there are also shapes within those levels. The last measure needs a little bit of explanation. The accent and staccato markings do not appear over those 8th notes in the violin music. This is certainly a strong cadence, but we need to be careful not to overdo those 8th notes, otherwise the effect will be harsh and unmusical, similar to before. Here's an example of how not to play the last 2 measures before letter A. This is a more elegant way to end the phrase. The second time through, I think it's appropriate to add a little ornament. In the Baroque period, ornamentation was a standard practice used by performers to embellish certain notes. I will use a mordent, simply a lower neighbor tone, on the B natural the second time I play this phrase. We have another sequence at letter A, and this one starts at a piano dynamic level. I think it's appropriate each time the music rises by a step to increase the dynamics slightly. This sequence will bring us to a very dramatic section in D minor, so we need to have that in mind as we start the sequence. Listen to how I'm shaping my dynamics between letter A and letter B. Earlier in the piece, we saw many sudden dynamic shifts, like an echo. The dynamics at letter B are much more similar to that. I'd like to take a moment to talk about rolling on mallet instruments. In this piece, McMillan specifies that a quarter note or longer, or any note with a capital letter R, should be rolled. Keep in mind that on mallet instruments, we roll to sustain the sound, so you want to avoid accenting the beginning or ending of the roll. Finally, as at the end of the first section of the piece, the cadence in A minor deserves an ornament, another mordent on the G sharp. The lower neighbor note of G sharp is F sharp when you're in the A minor scale, not F natural or G natural, and I'll play it for you all 3 ways so you can hear what it sounds like the first 2 times with the incorrect lower neighbor note, and then the 3rd time with the G sharp and F sharp as its lower neighbor. I hope you've enjoyed my discussion of this movement. I invite you to watch the performance at the beginning of my video again to see how all of these ideas discussed fit together as a whole. Please subscribe if videos like this are helpful to you, and if you're preparing this work for your Kansas 2020 All-State audition, I wish you all the best in your preparation. I'm currently accepting students for my online percussion studio, and lessons will be taught using Zoom and YouTube. If this is something that's interesting to you, please visit my website, www.blaiserothwellpercussion, transcribed.com and learn how to sign up.